Hi everyone, and welcome to my first restoration video. This one we're going to do a Tonka 55010 truck. I got this little guy as part of a bundle deal on eBay, and it was in pretty good shape when I got it. As you can see, there's, a little bit of rust on it. The white plastic is slightly yellowed, and the windscreen is a little bit yellowed. That usually happens when these things are out in the sun a lot. The person who had this before me didn't take the greatest care of it. They left some interesting pen marks and stuff like that in the wheel hubs. And other than that, though, it's in pretty good shape. So I wanted to bring it back to life, make it as pretty as it was the day it was bought. Now, of course, the first step in any resto like this is taking it apart. And these trucks come apart relatively easily. They're all put together with these metal tabs that you just basically bend and take the whole thing apart. So you can see there's me taking everything apart and showing you guys what everything looked like taken apart. And here's what it looked like apart. And sorry for the potato quality. I realized that my Osmo Pocket wasn't focusing well, but you can get an idea of the kind of rust that's on there, at least what's showing through the paint. And these are the axles. There was a lot more rust on here than you could see. You see that top one's pretty bad. But it wasn't like deep rust. It was just showing through the paint and kind of screwing up the paint a little bit. So it was manageable. At least I thought it was, and you'll see later how it wasn't. There's the yellow on the windscreen. And again, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And it was going to be a bit of a trick to get that clear again. And this is the interior, and you could see it had rust stains, and it had turned yellow, and it was utterly filthy. Just completely filthy. That ended up going in the ultrasonic cleaner before it even got a coat of paint on it, because it just needed it that bad. And there's all the parts. Very simple. Tonka trucks go together so simply. That's the beauty of them. They're really easy to get together. So here I am down in the shop getting the rust off the axles, and I use Airbrush, which is basically safe enough that you could drink it, although I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. But this stuff works great. I've used it on a couple of different projects, and it takes the rust off really nice, doesn't leave a residue, and doesn't require like extensive processing. You can dunk it in there and just leave it there, and you're good to go. About a half hour later, I came back and I dunked them all in some water just to rinse off the Airbrush. And we give them a little inspection just to see how well it did. And I noticed as I was doing it that the last one that I took out wasn't great. So I took the Airbrush and I put it back in there for a little while longer. And it definitely did the trick. Next was drilling out the rivet that holds the front part together, and this was made much easier by the fact that I have a rivet drilling bit for my drill. Now, I look like I'm struggling here, and I promise you I'm not struggling as much as it looks, but I had to get the bit centered on the rivet, which I couldn't really do on the front. So then I had the idea to flip it over and try to work it from the inside instead. And as soon as I did that, I started getting through. And yes, I'm wearing Crocs. Don't hate. They're comfortable, especially in the shop. And here we go. I ended up putting a piece of wood there because I was having trouble getting a stable enough base. This was really tricky, trying to figure out what was the best way to get through this little rivet here. But I did end up figuring out that a regular bit in conjunction with the rivet removal bit was the right way to go. And eventually, after struggling with this thing for way longer than I should have struggled with it, I do eventually get the rivet loose enough and the flange off the rivet where it just pops open. And once it pops open, we're golden. And there we go. No more rivet, which means nothing's holding it together at this point. Perfect. So the next step is getting the paint off, and I learned this method from Matchbox Garage, And you basically take boiling water and you cover the little vehicle just like this, and you add a couple of tablespoons of caustic soda, otherwise known as lye. You can get really pure stuff for making soap, and it also works as a drain cleaner. So a couple of tablespoons in, and this stuff foams like nobody's business. Look at that. It's amazing. Boils over, and I ended up leaving it in there for about 15 minutes. That was all it really needed. You can kind of see the bubbles forming on the paint in the vase here. And I wasn't sure it was active enough, so I dropped one more in just to be on the safe side. And that's the reaction I was looking for. And you can already see little flakes of paint started floating off at this point. And this is what was left behind. And you could see how much rust and how bad it was in this video. Like, there is just a ton of rust. And it wasn't terribly deep, but it was just this weird, lacy, spider webby mess all over the entire casting. And again, I'm sorry for the potato quality. I was having trouble. This is my first video. I get a little bit of a break, right? And that's where I left the decal on like an idiot, which means, of course, that part, the cab, has to go back in because there's no way in hell that paint's coming off any other way. Great job, genius. Back into the Evaporust we go to try to get the remaining rust off the cab pieces. This was actually on my Instagram story. If you guys want to follow that, you can see this stuff as it happens. But you can see that they are just sitting in there, and that's how they came out. Just a little bit of oxidation, but no more rust. Now, oxidation would normally be something I'd want to deal with, but the good part is I'm going to prime this anyway, so it didn't really matter. So my first experience with the airbrush. First we did Rust-Oleum flat white, and the interior came out great. Just one or two coats, really quick, light coats, just to get the yellow. And look at that, it's punchy white. Now, check this out. This is the airbrush work that I did after I put the new rivet on. And look at that. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect. You can see there's a couple of spots where it's a little uneven. But this is my first time using an airbrush. And I used Tester's blue model paint, and the enamel just made this nice, hard shell. It's just perfect. Now the wheels. The wheels are a problem because they are terrible, and I couldn't quite figure out how to get white paint onto them. So I made this little template on my Glowforge, and the idea was I was going to hold this up to the wheels and just spray paint through it, and it didn't really work. In fact, it worked really, really poorly. So I ended up taking the wheels up to my jewelry studio and hitting them with paint pens. That's the transparency after I took it out. And one of the things that my camera ate was the footage of me polishing it, so I don't have that footage either. So I'm really sorry, but you're going to get to see the reveal. So this is where we started. This is the original truck as I got it from eBay. And that's what she looks like now. There's a couple of things that I would improve. I would definitely need to get my technique down for the clear stuff, make it look a little better. And my airbrush technique needs some work. And I think for the wheels, the next time I'm just going to drop them in boiling water and see if that does the trick to soften them up enough to get them off the hubs. But I'm pretty happy with how this turned out as it is. I love the new color. I love how clear the window is. It's still a little yellow. I don't think it's ever going to not be yellow because it was out in the sun and in the UV and whatnot. But I do love the way it looks. It's shiny. All the dullness is off of it. And there's a couple of scratches that I put on, but I didn't want to risk taking it apart and ruining it after putting all that work into it. But yeah, this is it. I think I'm going to keep this one. The Tonka label is vinyl cut on my Cricut. So just so you know, the Cricuts aren't just for making t-shirts and stuff like that. I made those on there, and it looks perfect. It looks as good as it did on the day the truck was made. So yeah, that's going to do it, everybody. Thank you for watching. And if you have any suggestions, if you've ever done anything like this in the past, be sure to leave them down in the comments, because I'm definitely learning this process. I definitely want to get better at it. And I'm still pretty proud of this, because for a first restoration, the results were way, way, way better than anything I've ever done on a first attempt ever. And that's going to do it. I'm going to show you some beauty shots, and we're going to get out of here. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.